force members may come up to the table. Thank you. So let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'm L.K. Nand, I'm District Secretary with FDOT District 1, and I'm the task force chair here. So I want to welcome and thank you for your time participating on this task force. I want to emphasize how much our recommendations are crucial for the planning of the future of this corridor. I want to also thank City of Moorhaven and Glades County for hosting this meeting and giving this wonderful facility for us to hold this meeting. I want to give the opportunity to our host, Commissioner Pryor, to address the task force. Commissioner?
Welcome each and every one of you to Glades County. It's a pleasure to have you here, and if you've never been to rural America, you're here. This task force for this county and what we're trying to do here could be a viable thing for this county and the surrounding counties. Economic opportunity for us, as you can see when you're coming in here, would be great. Glades County is very rural. We're a big agriculture community, and if you eat, you are a part of agriculture, whether you like it or not. And we want each and every one of you to take that home with you, and remember that. Thank each and every one of you for coming again. Anything Glades County can do to help you, we're here for you. I would like to recognize I do have two commissioners here. I know Commissioner John Ahern and Commissioner Tim Stanley. Again, thank you for being here. Anything we can do to help while you're here to improve your stay, let us know.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I want to remind everyone on the task force, our focus is on the charge given by the legislature and the governor. So we're following the requirements in the legislation and are on track to provide the final report by our deadline, which is October 1st of this year. This is the fourth of the 9 task force meetings. I want to thank each one of you for the engaging conversations that we had at the last task force meeting as we talked about the needs and then got into the economic development conversations and further developed our guiding principles. Thank you for that. And I'm hoping that we have same engaging conversations throughout the meeting today. As you will see with the agenda, today we will continue and broaden the discussion about considerations for the corridor. This morning, we will have an economic and workforce development opportunities panel, followed by a presentation and discussion of local government comprehensive plans. That was one topic that we mentioned in the last meeting. The purpose of these discussions is to provide more information in areas requested in the prior task force meetings and for continued discussions of further defining needs and the guiding principles. In the afternoon, we'll hear more about the corridor planning process, covering the topics of multi-use corridors, what that means, existing modal infrastructure, and traffic analysis methodology, the introduction to our enhanced alternative corridor evaluation process, and the policy framework regarding funding. One of the terms you will hear a lot today is path course. This is a term we are using to describe the level of discussion that we are having at these task force meetings and for the transportation corridors in this process. The definition of path courses, to be clear, so we are all on the same page, is broad geographic area for a transportation corridor connecting two or more locations, indicating a general direction of movement. This is a broad area, not yet at the point of an alignment. The terms path and course are used interchangeably or consistent with what we've talked about from the first task force meeting to this point. Getting into public comments, as we always said, the department is very much focused on public input. Public comments are very important for us for this process. We will be taking public comments all day through multiple options. You can visit a public comment station in the back of the room to fill out a comment form or to ask a staff person to record your comment. You can also fill out a speaker request card and ask to speak to the task force as a whole during the public comment period starting at 4 p.m. During a break, you can stop at the registration desk to pick up and return a speaker card. We will accommodate as many members of the public as possible during this period. I would ask the task force members to please stay as long as possible to hear public comment, because it's very important for this process. Finally, FloridaMPost.com website also allows for comments at any time, and folks are also welcome to email at fdot.listens@dot.state.fl.us. Our facilitator, Karen, is sitting right there in the bright green stool. We'll review the agenda and the printed materials in your folder a little bit later. Presentations will be uploaded to the FloridaMPost.com website as resources moving forward. I want to thank the staff here who are recording this meeting. Please put your tent card up so they can tell who is talking. One other thing is you need to hold the push button on the microphone as you're speaking and state your name so that we can tell who's talking. Karen, you want to go over introductions, updates, and agenda review?
So good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to task force meeting in Moorhaven in particular, one of my favorite places for biking. For a roll call, we're going to do the informal roll call that we have been doing so far. So I'm going to ask members who will go around the table, starting with Commissioner Pryor, to introduce themselves, provide the organization they are representing, as well as if you're a county commissioner, if you could also let us know what county or municipality that you're from. We do have several substitutes today, so if you also would provide your name and then who you're substituting for, that would be great for the record. And we have two people that were unable to show so far, and that's Rochelle Johnson with Volunteers Florida and Mark Futrell with the Public Service Commission who sent their grants, and Colin Larry may also not be able to join us. So with that, I'll start with Weston.
Commissioner Pryor, Glades County Board of County Commissioners.
You have to hold it the entire time.
Jerry Buer, Association.
Penny Taylor, Board of County, Collier County Commission. Janet Taylor, Florida Department of Agriculture and Utility Services, former Henry County Commission. And no relation. No relation.
Don Scott, Lee County MDO.
Melissa Roberts, South Florida Water Management District.
Good morning, Ken Doherty, County Commissioner, Charlotte County, representing the Board of County Commissioners.
Good morning, T. Michael Stav is representing the City of Winter Haven here on behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Matt Birdsong.
Robert Richards, Department of Education, Collier County.
Mitchell Wills, Henry County Board of County Commissioners.
Andrew Dickman, Alton, Florida.
Keith Walpole Incorporated and the Florida Trucking Association.
Yes, Rick Ross, Untitled Chapter Commission.
Good morning, Gary Ritter with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation, and Karen, this is one of my favorite places to cycle around here as well.
Good morning, Matt Caldwell, former state representative and representing Maxwell Andrew Simmons, expertise in conservation and acquisition.
Glenn Little, South Florida State College.
Elizabeth Fleming, Defenders of Wildlife.
Good morning, Donna Doubleday, representing CORES, Florida.
Elton Lightman, Commissioner, representative Southern County Board of County Commissioners.
Katie Worthington Decker with the Greater Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, Tom Grave, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Southwest Regional Director. Brian Starford, Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Sherry Ambrose, representing the Florida Economic Development Council.
Jason Lauritsen at the Florida Wildlife Corridor.
Good morning, Tim McGrath, the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Mike Thompson, the Hardy County Commissioner, representing the people of Hardy County.
Wendy Matthews, the Nature Conservancy.
Bill Ferry with the Florida Internet and Television Association.
Tiffany Collins, Florida Department of Health, alternate for Stephanie Mick. Shannon Eskimos, Everglades Foundation.
Good morning, Bill McDaniel, Collier County Commissioner, representing the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council.
Good morning, Ron Hanley, Board of County Commission, Howard County.
Good morning, Tamara Sakagawa with Polk State College, representing President Angela Garcia Falconetti.
Paul Gray, Florida, here representing the Birds.
Good morning, Christopher Constance, Charlotte County Commissioner, representing the Charlotte County Planning Board MPO.
Eric Anderson, Enterprise Florida.
I'm Pat Stu with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Cecil Pendergrass, Lee County Board of County Commissioners, Lee County.
Jennifer Carpenter, Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Good morning, Karen Gates on behalf of the Department of Economic Opportunity, and I'm filling in for Pam Johnson.
Hi, Tracy Hood, and I'm with the Department of Transportation.
And as you know, this time we've provided everyone with a seating chart, so you'll be able to see who everyone is sitting around the room. I know we mix you up every time. So once again, if you say your name before you give us a comment, that'll help people find each other and also help with the live streaming. Okay.
Thank you, Karen. At this time, I'd like to introduce key staff members who are supporting this particular meeting. Bill Watts, our chief engineer, is here. Wei Wei Shen, our chief planner. Marlon Becerra, who's our production lead from this corridor.
Thank you.
Amy Toole, program engineer. Barbara Davis, our toll studies administrator from Turnpike. Beth Kegel, from our owner's rep consultant, HNTV. John Frey with our Attorney General staff. Karen, you want to introduce other staff members?
Sure. We also have some technical experts and people that will be helping out through the day. I know we have Chris Piazza, Bo, I've forgotten your last name, I apologize, the note takers, as well as John Kaliski that you'll see running around and they pop up to speak.
Thank you, Karen. As a reminder, I would emphasize it's important for continuity of discussions that you attend each of these task force meetings. And if for unforced reasons that is not possible, you may request to send a substitute approved by the FDOT, our secretary. Karen, you want to go over the safety instructions and agenda for today?
Yes, I will. So everyone can see that we have several ways to exit the building. Doors there, door here, and door here. If there is an emergency, I'm tasked with calling 911. I know Tracy knows CPR. Is anyone else in the room CPR certified? Okay, great. We have a few on the left over there who can help with that. If we need to evacuate, we will evacuate to the vacant field by the school. There is a sports field over there, and so we'll just meet over by that field and take another roll call there. I would also ask you to silence your phones. That may happen for you given some of the service issues out here. So we'll go from there. Do you want me to continue with the objectives and the packet review?
Yes, please, Karen.
Okay. So you've seen, with the agenda, you've seen the objectives today, obviously to review some public engagement since the last task force meeting. LK mentioned the economic and workforce development opportunities and initiatives underway. We'll talk about that with the panel and with Amy's presentation. There's also been a lot of requests about comprehensive plan and visions in the community, so that we'll have the Department of Economic Opportunity helping with that. And then corridor planning process in terms of what are the next steps. People want to understand how the guiding principles avoidance, minimization, mitigation, and enhancement Amy guidelines fit into those steps and avoidance areas, and then we'll receive public comment. That comment period has been moved up to 4 o'clock to start a little bit earlier, hopefully, so people can stay. Just an overview of the agenda, I did mention in the morning that we will do the public engagement, the workforce development panel. The economic and workforce development panel. That will be after a report out on workforce development updates, as I've mentioned in the legislation, and then the local government comprehensive plans. With discussion around each of them, we are hoping for a lot of interaction. And in the afternoon, like I said, we will talk about the various aspects of the border planning process. That also will include some discussion on traffic analysis, methodology, and a framework related to funding. And we will finish with talking about an avoidance areas map and the guiding principles. Many of you know that lunch is on your own. Commissioner Pryor has noted that with season, many of the local restaurants are very full this time of year, and we only have an hour, so we do have on-site food trucks that will be coming. In your packet, you will see a menu of the options that they will be providing. If you fill that out and return it to the registration desk at break, they will try to have that food waiting for you, and you can purchase it then at lunchtime when you pick it up. That packet, that sheet also has a list of restaurants should you decide to wander out and explore the area. As OK said, was taking public comments in the back. You can also pick up a speaker card at the registration table. And now I'm going to walk through the products and the folders. Any questions so far, really quick? Okay, so in your packets today, you kind of have two sides. The left side is our map side. I'll walk through some of those, and then the right side is more of the text and informational items. So you have a copy of the agenda. There's a copy of the task force meetings and community open houses. This has changed since you saw it at the last meeting, just as a refresher for folks. There was some concern about Tuesday meetings. We tried to move most of them, but there is still one meeting that's on a Tuesday. So we want to try to look for substitutes for those commissioners that have conflicts for the April meeting. We also have a task force membership list in there, so that you have that at your hand. There have been a few slight replacements along the way. We also have a revised work plan that describes the next meetings and what will be done and activities at each, and I'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. We also have the task force engagement plan. This was developed and talked about at the very first meeting. We've been bringing it back. It's been in your packet, I think, most meetings, if not all. And this is the item that talks about the consensus building process, which we're in now in terms of gathering information, common understanding, and then how consensus will be reached. We're having some questions on that. In terms of maps, we have the study area map. We also, as you saw on the agenda, we're going to talk about multimodal opportunities. So there's rail, trail, and transit maps out there in your packet. Also, the future land use maps from each of the 9 counties are in the packet. I will warn you that by the colors look the same, the names may be the same, they can be different in each county, but they're there so you can get a feel for where different types of development are expected. And there'll be some discussion of that with the comp plan presentation. There's an expedited state review amendment process that talks about how comprehensive plans are adjusted over time. There's the bios for today's economic development, workforce development panel. I know this is a lot. And then avoidance areas and the features in them. You'll see the map that we'll talk about and the features that are used in that map. And let Will and company explain what that is before you kind of jump into that. I think we need to give you some context. And then you'll also see the guiding principles. They come in 2 forms, a summary sheet and a work list. And then lastly, we have a glossary and restaurants information and then a meeting evaluation. So I know we give you a lot to go through, but hopefully you can kind of skim through it as you're sitting through today. And then just really quick for the recap of the work plan. At this meeting 4, and meetings 5 and 6, staff will be bringing specific topic areas back for in-depth discussions. Today is the comprehensive plan, the economic development, workforce development, plus the afternoon topics. At meetings 5 and 6, there'll be more information on things such as utilities, forecasted traffic data, what does it look like and what is anticipated for the future, and then how existing facilities could potentially be improved and emergency evacuation and response. There's a break in task force meetings in May, just so that you know, so that the information, the guiding principles that have been developed so far can be taken to the public and get some feedback through a series of community open houses. So information in particular that you want them to see should be raised as well. And then meetings 7 and 8 will focus on finalizing the recommendations and draft report, with meeting 9 actually finalizing that report. So are there any questions for clarification? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So the next agenda item is overview of the Sunshine Law. We got a video. We made a commitment to show this video at every meeting, so we keep our responsibilities fresh in our mind. So Karen, you want to play the video?
And I'll introduce John, who's also here. If you want to stand up, if you have questions throughout the day, you can ask him questions going forward.
Florida's Sunshine Law. Florida's government, in the Sunshine Law, provides a right of access to governmental proceedings at both the state and local levels. In the absence of a statutory exemption, it applies to any gathering of 2 or more members of the same board to discuss some matter which will foreseeably come before that board for action. Scope of the Sunshine Law. Board members may not engage in private discussions with each other about board business, either in person or by telephone, email, texting, or any other type of electronic communication, such as Facebook or blogging. While an individual board member is not prohibited from discussing board business with staff or non-board members, these individuals may not be used as a liaison to communicate information between board members. For example, a board member cannot ask staff to poll other board members to determine their views on a board issue. The Sunshine Law applies to advisory boards created pursuant to law or ordinance or otherwise established by public agencies or officials. Staff meetings are not normally subject to the Sunshine Law. However, staff committees may be subject to the Sunshine Law if they are deemed to be part of the decision-making process, as opposed to traditional staff functions like fact-finding or information gathering. Board meetings. While boards may adopt reasonable rules and policies to ensure orderly conduct of meetings, the Sunshine Law does not allow boards to ban non-disruptive videotaping, tape recording, or photography at public meetings. Public Records Law. Florida's Public Records Act, Chapter 119, Florida Statutes, provides a right of access to records of state and local governments, as well as private entities acting on their behalf. If materials fall within the definition of a public record, it must be disclosed to the public unless there is a statutory exemption. The term public records means all documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software, or other material, regardless of the physical form, characteristics, or means of transmission. This includes electronic communication like text messaging and emails, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance, or in connection with a transaction of official business, by an agency, including a private entity action on behalf of a public agency, which are used to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. Providing public records. Public records cannot be withheld at the request of the sender. A requester is not required to show legitimate or non-commercial interest as a condition of access. A request cannot be denied because it is overbroad. Unless authorized by another statute, an agency may not require that public records requests be in writing or require the requester to identify himself or herself.
Are there any questions? Okay.
Right, so we have Beth Kegel with our owner's rep consultant who will provide an overview of public input received since the last meeting and talk about upcoming community open houses. We revisited how and when to receive public comment. Due to the variable length, it is difficult to insert early in the day. So however, the schedule has been modified, like Karen mentioned, to start the public comment period at 4 o'clock. So Beth, you want to go over the presentation?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Someone responded. Thank you. Engaging members of the public continues to be a priority for the department. So what you're going to see this morning is an update from the last task force meeting that we had in December in LaBelle and some statistics. First of all, we've had 3 additional community open houses. And as you can see, they span 3 counties within the study area, Collier, Polk, and DeSoto. So we continue to spread that opportunity for public engagement throughout the region. Our team was actually able to engage roughly about 100 attendees. And those that came saw the information, such as the boards that you had at task force meeting number 3, with the regional economic information, as well as the environmental aspects of the region. They were able to work with the touch screens and talk to subject matter experts, as well as provide comment, as we always make available at those open houses. Now you're going to see some overall input statistics. These statistics span all 3 study areas. So you can see we've added some new e-newsletter subscribers, and this is data from December 2nd through January 31st, just to clarify. You can see a number of new page views of the website, as well as a significant number of public comments that have come in through various methods. One thing I want to mention about the public comments, there have been so many coming in that the department is working right now to consolidate and categorize those and put it in a fashion that's easy to view and digest. So that information is coming and will be made available to all of you. As you know, on the website, there also is a web mapping application. So you can see all of the different study areas. Ours, Southwest Central, is there in the center. So we actually have a pretty good average daily view count of that. Nearly 26 people a day are looking at those maps. The department continues to have one-on-one meetings and discussions with all of you that would like one, and members of the task force, because it's very important to continue reviewing the process to date, the process to come, and getting information from you to make these meetings as productive as possible for you. Also, FDOT has begun to hold meetings with local agencies such as county and municipal public officials to gain a further perspective on the needs of the study area. You may have seen in the latest e-newsletter that workshops are now available for local agencies as well as stakeholder groups. All they have to do is send a request into the FDOT Listens email address, and they can request a small group presentation or a workshop. And as always, we continue to put information out to the public through social media for the task force meetings as well as the community open houses to keep them informed. And the e-newsletters have been going up for everyone who signs up to get that. And we do make it a point to make sure they know that they can sign up and get those. As Karen mentioned in your packet, you can see the schedule of all of the upcoming task force meetings and community open houses with their locations. Just so that you know, it could be subject to change, although these are pretty firm, so just be on the lookout from us. We will make sure to notify you if there are any changes at all, but hopefully that will help you for your planning purposes. What we have here is what's coming up in March. So we do have task force meeting number 5 on March 4th. We have a community open house on March 26th, both of which are happening in Sebring and Highlands County. So we'll be in Highlands County next time around. And I believe that's all I have. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Beth. So the next agenda item is an update on our workforce development initiative. Amy Toole is going to provide this presentation. So as you all know, we are here because of the requirement in the legislature for a task force to come up with recommendations for corridor evaluation and development. However, the CORES legislation also includes provisions related to the department's FDOT's current workforce development initiatives and the creation of a road and bridge construction program intended to provide economic benefits back to the local communities. So Amy is going to go over our workforce development initiative.
Thank you. As LK said, my name is Amy Toole. I'm the Corridor Program Manager at FDOT, and today I want to speak to you about our workforce development program. But before I get into the meat and potatoes of the workforce development program, I want to go over some statistics with you. Florida's work program is one of the largest in the nation. Our total adopted funding and budget for the next 5 years is $52.2 billion, 46% of which is allocated to construction. As of January 29th, we had 514 active construction contracts out there, totaling about $12.9 billion. Our state highway system is over 44,000 lane miles, and we have over 334,000 daily vehicle miles traveled. Now, some statistics about population. I know you've seen this slide in previous task force meetings, but we've updated and added a couple more statistics. Florida is the 3rd largest state in the United States by population, and our population density in 2019 was 21.5 million. Our forecasted population for 2070 is 33.7 million. We had 127 million visitors in 2018, and we're forecasted in 2026 to have 168.9 million. We had spoken in previous task force meetings that Florida is the 2nd fastest growing state in the United States, but we've just recently found out, according to U-Haul's data migration trends in 2019, Florida is now the leading relocation state in the United States. And that is based on net gain of one-way U-Haul trucks entering the state versus that leaving in that calendar year. And looking at the 2019 unemployment rates for this study area, out of the 9 counties, we have 6 counties that are above the 3.1 statewide average for unemployment. And employment by history or by industry. Retail, trade, and healthcare and social assistance lead the areas of employment by history, with construction coming in 5th. We recognize that agricultural and phosphate mining are significant contributors of the employment. They just were not in the top 5 of the statistics. Now in 2019, our duties and responsibilities within the Florida Department of Transportation Florida statutes were amended to include a workforce development component. Florida statute section 334.044 parent 35 talks about the duties of the department. And I won't read every little bullet here. I want to go over some highlighted points in that per the amended Florida statutes, we are to provide direct economic benefits to communities in which the department is constructing infrastructure projects and promote employment opportunities, including within areas of low income and high unemployment. The department shall merge any of its own existing workforce services into the program and create a robust workforce development program. The workforce development program must serve as a tool to address the construction labor shortage by recruiting and developing a group of skilled workers for the infrastructure projects to increase the likelihood of the department projects remaining on time and within budget. Additionally, we are to work with some of our contractors and consultants and nonprofit entities and local community partners, as well as the Florida college system and institutions. But the big key here is by June 30th, 2020, using the metrics that we have to put into place, the department shall prepare and provide a report to the governor, president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives detailing the results of the findings and containing any recommendations relating to the future program refinements. So that is related to our duties and responsibilities, our duties of the department with related to the workforce development. Under Florida Statute Section 338.2278, Parent 8, the multi-use corridors of economic significance program, that is where our funding for this program came into play. And so for the next 3 fiscal years, we have been funded for $2.5 million a year for our workforce development. So now let's talk about what this looks like for the department. The first component of the department's workforce development program targets attracting individuals who are unemployed. Our first program that we have up and running is our workforce development training program. And the goal is to recruit, train, and employ individuals who have not been exposed to the road and bridge construction industry. So we partner with our contractors. They come to us. They let us know when they have a need on a certain project or in a certain area. We work with our local community partners to become recruiters, and they go out into the community and recruit individuals around that particular project and try to bring those individuals in to fill out applications. And our community partners work with our contractors to review those applications and those resumes. And the contractors then invite these applicants to participate into a one-day orientation. And at that orientation, we as the department and our local consultants and recruiters, talk to the individuals and let them know what the construction industry is about and for road and bridge. And after that one-day session, then our contractors get back with our recruiters, and they look over the applications and look over the applicants again, and they invite certain applicants that fit their needs into a one-week training program. And in that one-week training program, they're expected to show up on time every day, be there the entire day, for 5 days. And in that sense, they learn about the soft skills of life that maybe they're lacking, and then also get hands-on field experience to get to go out on the project site and see what a construction road and bridge project is about. If they don't successfully complete that program, or if they don't show up on time, they are dismissed from the program. But if they successfully complete that one-week program, then the contractors will then turn around, talk to the recruiters, and then possibly hire those applicants. And they begin work the very next week. Our second unemployment program that we have is our On Board for Jobs. And this is an existing program where we help connect job seekers with employment opportunities with our construction contractors. The program is run through our Equal Opportunity Office, and its goal is to increase the number of minorities, females, and veterans on our road and bridge construction projects. So as contractors see the need and have an opening or availability for hiring, they get with our On Board for Jobs program coordinators, and they're able to post those different job opportunities on a website. Our On Board for Jobs representatives also go out to hiring fairs, whether it's in the local community or with the contractor, and help individuals fill out their applications and then apply for jobs and help them recruit with our road and bridge projects. A program that we have under development using this new workforce development funds is a prison inmate transition program. And this program is being developed in partnership with the Department of Corrections and our FDOT contractors. Many of the individuals who have been incarcerated have difficulties finding employment after being released. And the intent is to set up a program where we can get these individuals reacclimated into working society. The second component of the department's workforce development program targets attracting non-college bound students. And this is our construction career days. And we've had this program around for a few years now. And how this works is we try to target 11th and 12th graders and vocational students who are non-college bound. We work with the schools and their administrators and try to identify students who might be on this path and could participate in our construction career days. We hold 5 different events around the state each year. Some may be 1 day, some may be 2 or 3 days. But we work with those school districts to bring those kids in and get them educated about what the road and bridge construction program is about. And so we do this in partnership with our construction contractors, our consultants, and DOT. And this is a volunteer where everybody works hard and volunteers at these particular construction career days. And what happens with this is each entity provides a learning lab. And at this learning lab, it can be something that is either demonstrative, instructional, or hands-on, or a combination of all of the above. And these students, 10 to 20 students, along with a chaperone, rotate in and out of these learning labs every 20 minutes. And they can be something as simple as you see here in the picture, they're just learning how heavy machinery operates. Or it can be hands-on, and they get to learn how to tie rebar. So it's really trying to get them educated about what this industry is about and the opportunities out there. Some things that we are trying to capitalize off of on the construction career days, understanding that we need to reach students not just in one venue, is a summer youth internship program and a construction career academy. And the internship program would be a 4 to 6 week part-time program or part-time internship with some of our construction contractors. Get them working on a job site, get them really immersed into what the road and bridge construction field is about. And then we have the Construction Career Academy that we're developing, which is the one-day academy that just immerses them and try to maybe learn about some of those soft skills, what career paths they can take into construction and road and bridge construction, but just really kind of keep capitalizing and keep educating the students on where they could go with this career. And how we're getting the metrics for that is at the Construction Career Days events, our representatives are out there with tablets surveying the individual kids and asking them what really excites them about that Construction Career Day event. And then asking them, are you interested in doing an internship, or are you interested in possibly participating in a Construction Career Academy? So those are the programs we have and that we're working on. I will be happy to take questions, but here's my email address if anybody wants to talk to me later. Any questions?
Yeah, Elizabeth, and then Jason, and Jim.
Yeah, Elizabeth Fleming with Defenders of Wildlife. I just had a comment about, I think it was maybe the second slide where you were showing how much development would take place in Florida. The people moving here, relocating and all that. You had a map that's actually 1,000 Friends of Florida, that map there. If I'm not mistaken, there were 3 maps associated with that project, and this, I believe, is the worst case scenario. So there are other maps as well. This one assumes no additional land is set aside for conservation whatsoever by 2070. And even this process, the CORES process, we've talked about enhancements and different benefits that might be brought to the landscape. So I think that that's misleading.
This is Andrew Dickman, 1,000 Friends of Florida. I just want to confirm that that is true. That's the worst case scenario, that map. The full report is on our website.
May I ask, though, I think it's also the trend scenario? Is that right?
If you continue under the same land use development trend scenario, yes, and it's,
Right, I just wanted to, yeah. Different
which is mostly suburban sprawl.
Right. So Jason and then Shannon.
Amy, thank you. I can definitely see benefits for the need for Florida and upkeeping with bridges and other infrastructure projects. And I'm wondering, it seems like the funding is provided through Senate Bill 7068, and I'm just wondering if the program that you're discussing has, if the outcomes of this task force or the recommendations made by this task force would influence your program at all, or if your program would continue as is without regard to the recommendations of the task force.
Yeah, there's only 3 years of funding, and it refers back to 334, which is the duties of the department. So we only have the 3 fiscal years of funding, and that's how we're operating. After that, we will have to reevaluate how we continue with some of the programs. Some of our existing programs and some will be developed, and that will just have to be reevaluated on how far it goes after.
Shannon and then Janet.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can just, since we don't have a signal to go onto the website, can you just go back to your unemployment slide? You moved so quickly off of it, I couldn't take a note. And then, just so that I understand this 1,000 Friends of Florida map, just so I make sure I understand. Yeah, what Andrew said, but also Elizabeth. So what you're saying is that the map that's put up there, or and the conclusions that you draw from it, is one choice that we can make, right? When we're doing things like planning roads in particular, because roads often sort of then define kind of where development goes. So that's kind of one choice, but there are other scenarios that if we made different choices, the map would look different. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Again, the full report's on the website. Transportation is one of the biggest factor in how land is developed.
Janet and then Paul.
And on your slide for the construction career day.
You need to hold the microphone, bring it closer to you, please.
On your, can you hear me now? On your construction career day, the locations, I didn't see anything in Southwest Florida. Can FDOT probably incorporate something that would include some of our areas, since we do have a great high unemployment?
That's something we can always look into.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Paul might be the last one.
Yeah, Paul
Oh,
Gray.
no, and then I see Weston. Okay.
Sorry, Paul Gray on one. Do you have an estimate of how many people at any given time are working for DOT, either as a contractor on a road project, or how many people you're employing on any given day? And then is that consistent from year to year, or do you have ups and downs, or just try to get an idea of the scope or the scale of the employment?
AASHTO does have some national averages based on how much the construction is funded and what that relates to employment. We'll get that back. I just don't have it on the top of my head right now. I'll get that back to you then.
And then Weston, if you want to wrap it up, the last one.
Yes, ma'am. Just to kind of feed off from Ms. Janet Taylor right here and the non-college bound student programs, we have a training facility. I don't know if you've seen it right out here in town. The legislature did a $5 million building for it. Was similar to the Polk State College. And we have a vacant building out here that is being used by a trucking company to do CDLs. But there's a push of the legislature that we're pushing in Glades County to get this thing funded. And we're going to make it a regional access for non-college bound student programs. And we're really promoting this, but we really need the help of the legislature to fund the process. And for our kids to go to work in the agriculture industry, be a mechanic, be a welder, a nursing program. We are really trying to push this for our community. And again, for you need service. We need service. We need broadband internet. You know, I mean, that's things our kids struggle with, get on the internet, just like you came in here. I mean, that's a real problem in our rural areas. So, I mean, things like that would benefit us. And it could be part of this road, and it all ties in together, economic opportunity for our counties.
Okay, with that, thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. So at this time, why don't we take a 15-minute break so that we can set up the panel, the next agenda item, which is a panel conversation. I want to remind, please fill out your order form and give it to our registration desk so that we can get the food ready by the lunchtime. The form is in your packet. Take time for it and then give it to the registration desk. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We've heard good information and discussion about our public engagement activities and the workforce development programs. At the past meetings, through our conversations, there were questions about requesting more specifics about the connection of transportation between economic and workforce development. So we have a panel here who's going to discuss that particular aspect. Karen, you want to introduce the panel?
I will do that, and then I'm going to let them actually self-introduce. So from your left to right, as I said it, so I'm trying to do this backwards. It's Beth Chichetti, the Executive Director from the Florida Economic Development Council. We got to sit in a different order. Bruce Lyon, President of the Winter Haven Economic Development Council. Then Mandy Hines, the County Administrator from DeSoto County. And Joe Paterno, the Executive Director from Southwest Florida Workforce Development. So we had a really good discussion as a pre-call with this panel. I think you're going to find it very informative in terms of their experience and the relationship of multimodal, multi-use corridors and the relationship to economic development, community development, and as well as workforce development and that needs associated with that. We're going to do it like we did last time. We'll open it up to questions when we're done. If you don't have any, we'll just prompt them and they'll be able to go for it. And you'll learn that as well. So I'm going to start.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Beth Chichetti, and I am the Executive Director of the Florida Economic Development Council. I have been practicing economic development in Florida for 20 years, and the last quarter of that period mostly focused on strategic sites identification and site readiness proximate to Florida's strategic intermodal system. So taking into account prioritization of new sites relative to roads, ports, railroad, and other types of transportation assets. That experience has been primarily in North Florida, in the northwest rural area of opportunity. And there have been two major greenfield projects that have taken place in the past couple of years that were dependent upon the transportation assets in that area. Both of these projects required new infrastructure, utilities and roads in order to, for the company to make a Florida decision. So we were able to utilize the Rural Infrastructure Fund to provide that new infrastructure, whether it was water, wastewater, and electricity and a new road in one instance. And the private landowner was willing to donate the right-of-way to the county to extend all of that infrastructure to the company. And as a result, it opened up an additional 40 acres of development in that community at an interstate interchange. In another instance, the company needed natural gas. And as a result of extending natural gas to the site, the gas revenues for the community doubled, which allowed that small rural community to reinvest in other aspects, particularly entrepreneurship, in their economic development strategy. I also serve, as I said, I lead our Florida Economic Development Council. And we are the professional association of 160 organizations representing 400 individuals who practice economic, workforce, and community development. These individuals get up every day focused on improving local communities and elevating Florida's global competitiveness. And as an organization, we are the boots on the ground who are using the policies and programs that local governments and state governments provide. And so we are a good feedback loop for the effectiveness of those policies and programs. And I would like to thank Sherry Ambrose for serving on this task force on behalf of the Florida Economic Development Council. We are pleased to have representatives on all 3 task forces.
Good morning. Bruce Lyon, Winter Haven Economic Development Council. I come to you, I started my career 24 years ago in the inner city of Philadelphia, bringing economic development projects, supermarkets, and affordable housing to impoverished neighborhoods. Transitioned from that to consulting, worked in about 20 states in economic development and affordable housing in different ways, and now manage Winter Haven's economic development activities. So I come with a very broad background. I've seen a lot of things, worked in urban environments, rural environments, workforce development, commercial, industrial, hospitality, entertainment, all of these different kind of cross-cutting sectors that can support the local economy are areas that I've got some experience. With respect to making Winter Haven a relevant topic for today, I think Winter Haven may be something of a microcosm of development that will occur through the development really of any new roads and infrastructure in Florida. We have a CSX terminal that's an intermodal terminal, moves about 800 containers a day through the terminal and takes those containers put them on rail, and rather than having them on our interstate highway system. So it creates tremendous efficiencies for us, and it loads a little bit, unloads a little bit of the freight off of our interstate highway system. The reason why this matters is because it's a local project, but it has regional significance, and really statewide significance. As most of the significant projects that we work on, they are local in nature, but they have a regional implication. And I think that if there's any message I want to get across today, it's about how we all have local interests, we all have local desires. Our communities have certain markets that they can serve and certain levels of market that needs to be served, but they don't operate in isolation. Right? They're connected. Highlands County is connected to DeSoto County. Well, we all have these really important connections among us. The roads, of course, provide the transit for that connection. But it's the economic development, the affordable housing, and the attainable housing, but also the nature of what we want our individual communities to be that is so important. And I think we have a really interesting opportunity to talk about that today. I look forward to hearing what these other panelists say, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Okay, good morning. My name is Mandy Hines. I'm the DeSoto County Administrator, and prior to being convinced to take this role, I worked in economic development. I worked with Beth probably a decade ago and really enjoy the economic development aspect, but it is complicated, it is complex, and while infrastructure is an extremely important part, there are a lot of other moving parts. It's not an event, it's a process. And so I wanted to just read an excerpt from you from a study that we did in 2014 from Site Selection Group. And Site Selection Group was a corporate site selector. And the reason we wanted to bring them into our region, into the Freddie region, now the FIRO region, and I still like to say the critical area, the area of critical economic concern rather than the area of opportunity, because in reality that's what that designation is. It is areas of critical economic concern. High poverty rates, low job, or a lot of underemployment type issues. So while from a marketing standpoint that doesn't help, it's the reality of what it is. But to understand the corporate site selection process, the modern site selection process is a multi-phased elimination exercise. It is an elimination exercise. that ensures only the most competitive communities survive. The process typically starts with a series of desktop analysis that integrates data provided by local and state economic developers, and typically ends with community visits and the securing of real estate and economic incentives. So what they're saying is, through a lot of different tools like GeoDecision and all these analysis tools, you're being eliminated or selected while we're sleeping from a desktop. It's not just a sales piece. But in the final analysis, the communities that have the optimal balance of labor availability, favorable business environment, adequate real estate offerings, reliable infrastructure. And I think that's really important to the NCORES discussion, is the reliable infrastructure, not just roads, broadband, water and sewer capacity, accessibility to assist systems, whether it be rail, and all those types of things. And good accessibility are more competitive and attracting business environment. Economic development professionals and community leaders play a critical role in this process, and their competency is directly correlated to the success of their community. So while I'm a big proponent of economic development, and also in a rural area in DeSoto, there is also something to be said about the preservation of the quality of life in those specific areas. I live in the more rural part of the state because I choose to. I love to go to Sarasota, I love to go to Miami, I love to go to Orlando, I love to go to all of the metropolitan areas, but I don't personally choose to live there. There's a reason for that. So there's a balance to be struck between conservation of land, conservation of resources, and quality of life. So I hope that our perspective is helpful for you today, and we look forward to an engaging conversation.
Good morning. I'm Joe Paterno. It says I'm the Director of Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board. That is our corporate structure. Many of you may be familiar, we're also called Career Source Southwest Florida, which is the brand that the state has put on it for all of our one-stop centers. I hate to admit it, but I've been in workforce development for over 44 years in 3 different states. The last 30 years, though, I've been in Southwest Florida. And our really main purpose is to try to serve the community. And I use the word community more so than some of my counterparts throughout the country. They serve people. I serve communities. And the community is tied to economic development, we're tied to the business community, and we're tied to individuals who are looking for either better jobs or jobs that they are unable for or don't have the skills for, that we can come in and provide some training costs. We actually don't do training, we use partners in our educational system, but we are able to provide them with tuition assistance and so forth so that they can get the training so that they can be competitive in the job market. The other things we try to do is to find those individuals, and I know they mentioned trying to get a lot of the students in the high school and so forth, but once they graduate or drop out, have you ever tried to find them? I know our offices try to recruit a number of them. Many of them turn to get engaged in things that we wouldn't want to have working for us. So we're trying to engage those individuals early on in the process to find out what their career interest is. That's one of our focus. We want to find what their career interest is. We want to figure out what they need to get to that career and what they need to do to keep that career. I know there was mentioned soft skills. We like to call them foundation skills because if they don't have them, they're not going to get employed. So we try to motivate them and teach the individuals, both young adults and adults. And I'm talking young adults, we classify from 18 to 24. So we want to make sure everybody has those skills. They have the ability to be able to get, maintain, and live self-sufficiently. Our role is actually to work ourselves out of a job. I tell that to people when they say I'm crazy. I say, no, it really is, because if you look if you saw the screen of the unemployment, many of the areas in my region, which is it's Charlotte, Collier, Glades, Henry, and Lee, the unemployment rate is 3%, 2%, 3.3%. That's full employment. So the people that we're trying to serve now many of them have barriers. So we have a lot harder job to do to try to recruit, find, and get people up to the point where they can be competitive, or can be competitive in the job market, but also be productive for those employers. We work regionally, and I agree with Bruce. When I first came here in 1984, we weren't a region. We are now. The transportation system that has been built up, the commute from Lee County to Collier County, is significant. If some of you have been on Interstate I-75 at that time, which I do every day, you'll understand. So infrastructure, roads, the ability for us to serve those individuals and to get the employers to realize that we're here, we're available, and that we can assist them in those recruiting efforts is really vitally important, and I'm glad to be here.
So thank you to all of them. So we're going to run this like last time. If you have a question and if you would put up your tent card, we're going to change it a little bit and allow follow-up along that same line if there is. And if anyone wants to contribute their own experience, this is an opportunity to do that as well. If you have a new question, put up your tent card and we'll ask you to state your name before the question. And then, okay. So I get to ask the question, it looks like. You all talked a little bit about multimodal infrastructure and how that relates to economic development. Do you want to describe how it plays into economic development, the relationship to it in terms of specific projects? Can we go right to the projects?
I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share. Excuse me, I'm happy to share a project that we have in DeSoto. It's an aged project a little bit, but it is the Walmart Distribution Center. It employs over 500 people from probably 7 different counties, and it's located on the southern end of US 17. When the Walmart Distribution Center made a location decision, I thought we were going to end up in World War III with Charlotte County as to which side of the county line that went on. But either way, we both win from that, just as we both win from a lot of the great projects that Charlotte County has been able to land. But that location decision for Walmart distribution, and again, cited in that site selection report, is that Walmart has one of the most sophisticated site selection processes in the world. So they're very careful about where they select. It's very data decision driven. But so why DeSoto then? Why DeSoto? Well, why DeSoto is the route in which they have to distribute all of those trucks. It's a 20,000 acres under roof. It is a huge facility. Sorry, it's 20 acres under roof. It's really, really big. It takes up most of the county. Sorry. But that location decision was really driven on that section of US 17 was already 4-lane, where the rest of that just got completed over the last couple of years. Thank you, FDOT, for that. The other significant infrastructure investment that had to be made was the utility, and it was really the impetus for the county to get into the utility business. So a $22 million investment in putting in a central sewer and water system, which is also served to help us spur economic development. So those are two pieces of infrastructure. Other ones, when we compete, as economic developers, you get project leads from Enterprise Florida and from site selectors at times. And a lot of times that company's not identified, but the key drivers, the key decision drivers for your response are identified. And sometimes it is access to broadband, if it's a call center or a labor, or, broadband intensive piece. It might be that there is the phase of power that's available. Rail may be critical, natural gas might be critical. So all of those infrastructure decisions absolutely drive where that is. And Walmart Distribution Center has really been a huge impact to DeSoto County, both to the tax base, and it also helps us create a cluster in the logistics and distribution mechanism. But the connectivity from where that's located throughout the state is really what drove that decision.
In North Florida, in the Opportunity Florida rural area of opportunity, there were 4 counties that came together to create an economic development strategy around their transportation assets. And a lot of times when you engage your stakeholders to create your economic development strategy, you will map your assets and determines which ones you really want to accentuate. And in this case, Gadsden, Liberty, Franklin, and Gulf shared a railroad asset, a short line in the Apalachicola Northern Railroad, and an emerging port in the port of Port St. Joe. So prior to CORES, FDOT, about 3 years ago, put into statute, or the legislature did under FDOT, freight logistics zones. And so within that language, it says that you can develop an economic development strategy around a shared asset as a region. Within that region, you need to identify at least one site that would be favorable to becoming an intermodal logistics center. And you also need to have a talent development strategy tied to that, and that really what that does for you is it gives you priority within the 5-year plan. There was some hope that the legislature would tie some funding to this. That I don't believe that's happened to this point. But those communities work together with their regional planning council to develop that strategy, and they now do have kind of a leg to stand on as they move forward with that strategy, as they then we were able to get funding to do due diligence on these sites, the goal being able to achieve a phase 1 environmental permit, because when you've done all of that work, you're much more prepared to be relevant in the conversations that Mandy talked about with the site selection community.
I was going to say, I'd like to add just one more example. I mentioned earlier CSX has an intermodal terminal in Winter Haven. This is something that came about, I don't even know the route date of it, probably mid-2000s, 2003, 4, 5 timeframe. It's now been open for 4 years. They run about 800 containers a day through this terminal. But just now, it's been open for 4 years, since 2014. Just now are we seeing other economic development stimulated around this investment. And some of that had to do with the freight logistics zone work that we did with Bulk and Hillsborough County to really align and analyze the resources that we had. They're local resources, but they really have regional points of regional impact. And so having the talking points and understanding all of the data and the community needs and the opportunities gave us additional input. So when developers or site selectors come to the table, we're able to really very smartly define what the opportunities are for them, what their route decisions may be back to Port Tampa Bay or to Orlando International, or whatever the case may be, so that they can really understand when they bring raw goods in by rail, how they're going to ship out finished product. Some maybe goes out by rail, others maybe goes out by truck, right? But them understanding, having a client understand that is critically important to having a leg up. But it's also important to understand that the CSX intermodal terminal is surrounded by 2,000 acres of land that's available for development. It's not all zoned industrial, it's not all zoned properly, but it is in what the city now terms, at my request, an industrial development zone. So philosophically, we asked the city to pass a resolution to say, we want to see industrial here. This is on the periphery of our city. It's got great transit access. It's got the intermodal terminal. It's got available land. And trucks coming to and from the business that will be conducted there won't interfere with the lifestyle components of the downtown core. And so it made a lot of sense for us to be directive that way and say, this is where we want you to locate. But we didn't change land use and zoning until land transactions occur. So we're not taking anyone's rights away. Where there's water resources and natural resources, those are identified and those are protected. So we're trying to be very smart about this kind of development to capitalize and maximize on the impact of CSX, but not do any additional damage to the environment or to our community by corrupting maybe the traffic systems through town with additional trucks. So it's just another example, and I think it's important to think about the nuances of the very local decision, that site selector type decision, but then how that interplays with the entire region.
Just briefly, I'd be remiss if I didn't support Commissioner in Glades County. You talk about regional initiatives. Now, I'm not in economic development, I'm in workforce. But there was a workforce initiative for the training center that's right down the street, that if everybody gets a chance to look at it. 3 school districts, 3 county commissions, everybody came together to put in the support for this. And one of the things was the issue was who's going to manage it and run it. So we came up with a plan that says we're going to use ITech, which is the Immokalee Technical College, would be a satellite. And that satellite then would be managed by basically Collier County School District and support from Henry County School District, Glades County School District. It's probably one of the first time in the Department of Education's history that they saw 3 school districts not competing against each other, but came together to say this is needed for the region because we need the workforce here to support the demands. So, as the Commissioner alluded to, we didn't get funding for it, but it's still on the table and it's still out there. But from a workforce standpoint, I think it's an issue and a regional concept that when you see 3 school systems and commissioners come together for the purposes of bettering the community and bettering the students and residents here, I think that's a regional win. Now, if we can just get the other part of it, and that's the funding to keep going up and running and get the process started. I wanted to make sure everybody saw that as a regional educational initiative.
Great, thank you. Sherry and Jason, I'm not sure who was first. Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you. So, we're talking about multi-use corridors of opportunity, and I think we've talked a lot about roads, and I appreciate, Andy, especially your comments about some of the other types of infrastructure that's required for economic development. Sitting here for me today, especially, connectivity, high-speed internet, and data is top of mind, and I was wondering if you all could speak more to the challenges and opportunities and any efforts here within the region on broadband and internet and those sorts of initiatives. I know in my experience that we get asked about fiber assets for all types of projects, not just ones that you might think, for manufacturing, for data centers, for almost any type of project these days. So I know it's crucial to all of our efforts.
Since everybody else reached for the mic. So City of Winter Haven actually has been investing in fiber assets in the ground, in conduit, for probably close to 15 years now. It's got 60 or 70 miles of fiber. Recently did a partnership with FDOT to extend fiber up US 27 through Haines City, through unincorporated Polk County, even north of I-4. So 20 miles north, we have fiber. That same concept can come south. Connectivity is critically important. And the city of Winter Haven saw that. They saw it from the municipal perspective and the need to connect civic assets, but also now we're looking at it and saying, look, there are tremendous economic benefits to having good fiber and connectivity out to more distant points. We're currently in the process of extending, we hope, we have a request in the legislature right now for a matching grant to extend fiber to our intermodal logistics center where CSX is. We're in due diligence with a company right now that needs fiber. They will be doing advanced manufacturing of aluminum cans, food-grade aluminum cans, so these plastic bottles, not those, right? But actually something that's recyclable, so it's good for the environment. They need fiber for their operations, right? In talking with manufacturers, we've met manufacturers who've said, look, I need fiber because when my equipment is manufactured in Germany or Austria or Korea, that's also where the software is maintained. So when we have patches, we have outages, we have problems, they troubleshoot from around the world. If we don't have fiber in these areas, we won't have advances in agri-tech, we won't have advances in advanced manufacturing because the companies simply can't do business without that level of connectivity. And so in Winter Haven, we're trying to pursue that, but it's almost, even though there's some regional efforts going on, it kind of feels like a one-man show or a one-city show with respect to that. And I don't want to spread any rumors, but we have heard recently that there is likely going to be a pullback from some of our conventional communications providers to maybe make less capital investment around the state, which is not a good sign either. So maybe that's not true, but it hasn't gotten here. That's why it's a point of conversation. If you want healthcare, if you want advanced manufacturing, if communities here desire those types of assets, they have to have good, solid, resilient, and I would say resilient meaning in the ground, not pole to pole, fiber.
Is anybody on the task force want to weigh in on the fiber issue or have experience with it that they want to share? T. Michael?
T. Michael Stabs with the City of Winter Haven. I just want to echo on what Bruce is saying, and I think that that infrastructure aspect is the critical infrastructure going forward. I mean, we're here to talk about roads and corridors, but when we talk to businesses about where they're looking to locate, the availability of that communication piece is critical, especially if you're talking about industrial distribution, manufacturing. How many of us are buying things off the line? All that is being processed through data. And the ability to drive that data to them, get the information back. On the medical side, it's the exact same thing. The Lambda rail is a perfect example of that. How do we connect all this together? What we have found as Bruce mentioned, for 16 years we've been putting fiber in the ground through a dig once policy. That effort came about through the capital development of infrastructure projects, predominantly roads and utilities. So to get that fiber-rich resource to areas where we don't have it today, where we have load corridors that are going in, it is the perfect opportunity to marry up those two infrastructure assets together and make that happen.
Bill, were you looking to weigh in on this, or do you have a different comment, a different question?
Maybe just to comment a little bit about what's being said about fiber and kind of the last mile is kind of what I would also say with that. When it comes to fiber, it is, putting it into the ground. I wouldn't say, just be careful, that's not a panacea to solve everything. Yeah, a lot of it is the last mile and having to do with actually connecting residents. So there is a sizable capital investment that's needed when it comes to actually serving neighborhoods or running lines, the distribution poles and those type of things. So just kind of remember that in that race. And definitely fiber is part of it, but also the other part is completing that last mile. And that's what typically your internet service providers are doing in investing their own capital to do that. I am not sure quite about the comment about providers pulling back. Certainly from the standpoint from the Florida Internet and Television Association, that is not the case in Florida. It is invest full speed in our communities in Florida.
That's good to hear. So I stand corrected, and that's fine. That's why I want to bring it up. The last mile is a critical point. So one of the things that we also need to think about is, for everyone who has kids, you probably know that your kids do their homework online, right? Most classwork now, you turn your homework in by email or through an online system or online portal. If students don't have connectivity, or if they use connectivity via a hotspot on their parent's cell phone, when they run out of minutes at the end of a month or the end of a 30-day cycle, those kids sometimes don't get to do their homework. They don't get to turn their homework in. This is causing a ripple effect through the education system in perhaps very small ways, but I would say very important ways. If a kid can't do their homework, the lack of self-esteem or the cost of the grade may keep them out of college or may cause other disruptions in their lives. These are simple things that we can do to help overlay both transportation, infrastructure, and technology and education to build the entire community, rather than not make those investments and continue to kind of meander along with the private sector to do it.
Anything else on broadband?
I think I want to add just one piece that there is, and that is in the CORES data that you have, DeSoto is represented as, I think, 40% of the population not having access to broadband. And I think to the gentleman's point here at the corner, and Bruce, to your point, the fiber connection is important. The wireless connection, the line of sight, wireless communication is great for last mile, but when it comes to the large manufacturers and those, I was kind of surprised to see the 40% mark, because I know in North Florida there are much larger challenges with connectivity and the panhandle, and where you have all of the trees and all the blockage in the way of the line of sight type of communication. But we've not had a lot of challenge. We do have some challenges at the local government level. We have a fire station that there is zero availability of broadband to get to that facility, and the amount of expansion that it would take is prohibitive for CenturyLink or a provider of that nature to be able to extend even a T1 line, much less the broadband piece. So I think that that's a critical piece. I think it's a great opportunity for the CORES corridor to help expand at least the broad pipeline, which then put in the middle mile, and it makes it a lot easier to get to, puts the last mile that much closer. But kind of like you have to walk before you crawl, and you have to build a foundation before you can put up the walls. So I think that those are valid. And Sherry, it's so valid because today businesses are born global, where before it was decades before they went global. So I think it's very valid.
Shannon, you said you had something on broadband?
Yeah, I was going to ask a different question, but this is such a great exchange. I'm going to ask a question about broadband, which is, I'm learning, it's kind of like Everglades restoration. It's a different language. I don't speak it, so there's a lot of code in there that I'm trying to middle mile, last mile, T1, fiber. Let's assume for a minute that this, which I think is true, in that the access to broadband and high-speed internet is absolutely critical. It seems obvious on its face to me. What I'm trying to help, if we could just continue this for a minute to fill in the gaps. So for who currently bears the cost of expanding high-speed internet, that's broadband, I guess it is, and who does that? And then in a place like my home county, Broward, which has been built out for a very, 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 very long time. We haven't been building big new roads in Broward for a very long time. But I'm assuming there's been an expansion of broadband in Broward County in the last 20 years where there hasn't necessarily been building new roads. And what are the economics of that? Does that make sense? How do we do that? How is that being done? Along existing corridors? Is there a different economic calculation that makes it easier to do it there? It would be really so helpful to me because what I'm hearing a lot is we should build new roads because we need broadband. There's that sort of direct connection, and it sounds to me like we really need broadband. How do we get it? And is building roads a fait accompli? You can only get broadband if you build new roads. I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, Bill, are you able to do any kind of primer on that, or will we bring that back next time with the utilities game? Maybe? We can talk about it now, that's fine, if Bill is ready to do it.
Sure.
I don't know who the expert in the room is to explain
So I can briefly speak to that.
Yeah, you take
But
a couple
the question is, how does broadband get rolled out? How does that investment, how does it happen? Is it government-led? Typically not. There are exceptions. There are cities that might do that. However, mostly it's what we would call at-risk capital. A company like mine, Comcast, NBC Universal, putting in those lines and upgrading it and constantly upgrading it or adding in more fiber, making it very fiber-rich for the community, being able to add on what other services there are and to make sure that that's the fastest. So it's primarily, it's private companies that do that.
Just to clarify then, so what you're saying then is that these private companies are forecasting, they might be forecasting existing existing users that are already there that don't have access, and then they're forecasting where new users might be, and they're using some forecasting tools then. They're looking at communities, how communities are growing and that sort of thing.
Well, yes, any company is going to look at all the opportunities that are there, whether they be there now or later. So they're always going to be looking into that.
I think it's probably the same with site selection, right?
Yeah, and I also think that to your point, and that is the challenge in rural communities, is it is a huge financial investment for a very small pool of users, and that's why it's the cart and the horse type of thing. So the rural broadband, there's some of the federal opportunities for rural broadband, and I won't even go into that because I served on that board about a decade ago, and I'll never do it again. But I do think that having a federal subsidy for the telcos to be able to put in that infrastructure to help subsidize for the rural is the right way to go. I just think it should go to the professionals that do it, and not to, certainly not to local government or to any other organization that doesn't specialize in that. You don't want your heart surgeon fixing your back, and you don't want the podiatrist doing brain surgery, so I think that broadband should be run by telcos.
If I could just make one last comment on this. In Winter Haven, it's been an installation of conduit and related pulling fiber. Winter Haven is not a service provider, so it simply leases the conduit and fiber to internet service providers who light it up and then provide that service to the different businesses in the area. When there is a road project, a sidewalk project, infrastructure project of some sort, it costs almost nothing to install conduit. And that fiber can later be pulled, it can be pulled at the same time, but the point is, when the hole is open, when the road is under construction, it's exceptionally cheap to put it in. When you're not under construction and you're breaking ground alongside a right-of-way and you're trying to do some sort of a joint trench agreement with DOT, it becomes very complicated and much, much more expensive. And so I think the point here is whether or not it's an installation of fiber or installation of conduit, and I won't split that hair because I'm not a fiber expert. The point is to provide for that future opportunity. And it is important, and we will need it throughout the state, and the more connectivity we can have, the better. No matter who pays for the actual fiber and lighting it up.
Yeah, so we had some people that wanted to change direction. Do we have some more on fiber, Chris?
Just thank you, Karen.
Okay, we'll get you too.
Just a real quick question, Bill Ferry. What about FirstNet, which is supposed to be for the first responders, and AT&T was basically got the contract because it was an option for the state to build it itself, but now they're going to do it. So where does that open up availability for broadband kind of everywhere? Because if you're going to build a tower to access in disasters, then the tower's there. So that's not really been clear to me about how that's going to roll out, because I thought the good thing about that was if it's there, then it's available for everybody.
Actually, I'm not familiar with that particular contract. It'd be a different company, so I wouldn't really be able to comment. I'm sorry.
So I'll move over to your colleagues, that Pat, and then Elizabeth, we can ask you a question. Yep.
Karen, Jason has got his gen card up for a long time, so.
Okay, I was just trying to, okay. Okay. We'll move on to, maybe your comment, your questions will come up in a minute, or we'll let the panelists will be here afterwards. Jason? Yeah.
The task force is charged with the responsibility of figuring out what the economic impacts and the land change impacts are from road alignment and this corridor. So I'm hoping that you can lend a little bit of insight from your experiences on options for road alignments, whether it's co-location with 1731 or 27, or if it's a greenfield alignment, and how that plays with economic development in existing communities versus new planned communities that might arise out of something like that. And I'm thinking, as an example, Immokalee and Ave Maria as a fairly new town, and economic opportunities that relate to that. And also yesterday's CORES task force had some conversation around, I think it's 589, and some of the resulting development that occurred in land use change as a result of that. So if you could just fill in a little bit of those two alternatives, co-location on existing infrastructure versus greenfield as it relates to the economic opportunities for existing communities as opposed to new communities that might come up and then land use change.
In North Florida, there is a private landowner who it took quite a while, I want to say at least 5 or 10 years, to work through all of the processes to bring this to realization. But if you consider Interstate 10, and really, if you drive Interstate 10, you will not understand, unless you already know, that there are vibrant communities off of every interchange along I-10 from, let's say, Pensacola to just west of Jacksonville. And it's the trees, and which you mentioned that before, they're not there anymore following Hurricane Michael. But there was a private landowner who saw the value in connecting several of the counties through a toll road that would be north of Interstate 10, north of some of the large bodies of water, that could provide for a way for professional service providers, pest control, plumbers, electricians, others, to serve these communities. And what it ultimately ended up doing is it also provided a direct access to the municipalities that are off the interstate, and all of the qualities of each of those municipalities. And so now, as you travel as a resident in the region, you have ways to get to, without having to go pretty far south and to go across on the interstate. So those are some of the examples of how you can look at putting in other corridors that will accentuate your local communities. And the other thing that I would add is that there are models that you can use to predict economic impacts based on, and so I would encourage you to work with your economic developers who have these tools. Powering Florida is a very robust suite of tools that all of the economic developers in the state have access to, and they can do some simulations of economic impact analyses of where you might see economic activity occur as a result of a driver. And whether it's a road like this, a corridor, a multi-use corridor that's the driver, whether it's a new foreign trade zone that will be that driver. There's all sorts of different drivers that would allow you to model these things so that you can use that data as input to your decision making.
I don't know if you answered or not, but just from our perspective, from the workforce side, and I know all of you are familiar with potential growth out here with the expansion of the airport. I was told and explained to me that at full potential, there could be as many as 150 semis leaving out of here on a daily basis. Now, if they went up 27 or south on 27, you're going to create a nightmare of traffic. So a road that would actually, for me, from the workforce side, because I've got to train I don't know how many truck drivers in the next several years, but a road that would allow them access to go north quickly to pick up another interchange would be beneficial to that industry, because everything they're going to transport, the majority is going to be perishable. They're going to all be refrigerated trucks, so if it's perishable, then they want to get those products out as fast as possible, and they would be going by truck. So I don't know if that helps you, but as you look at that, that is an issue that may be coming up in the near future.
Joe, would you just tell them which airport you're talking about?
Oh, the Everglades over in Henry County. I'm sorry. We have a lot of them out here. So it's Everglades over in Henry County. And you can get with the Henry County Economic Development to get all the details. But from a workforce side, I know I've been kind of told that we're going to have a number of individuals that's going to have to be trained and recruited. So we're starting to make provisions as to how we can get that done and recruit and find facilities to come out and need to train, and that's why we're really interested in the regional training center. But a direct access for those trucks would be enormous benefit to everybody.
I think, Jason, I really appreciate your question, because I think that it's two-faceted. I think one, it has to do in the regional planning councils and all the counties are representative. So one part of that decision would be based on maybe your existing comp plan and how that community had already planned to grow, where the densities are, which would help drive where there should be transportation to support that, or where it would not make sense to put something because there is no land use or density or access to infrastructure in that area or in that corridor. I think it's a very different question if you're talking about Collier County or DeSoto or Polk or where you're at. So it might make sense where a portion of that new corridor is green space and a portion of it then bleeds into maybe an existing corridor and then bends back off of that. I think there could be a combination of existing corridors and green space, depending on all of those things going from area to area and what makes the most sense. Also has the opportunity to lessen the environmental impact. When you can use existing corridors, it would make sense to do that, and financially it would make more sense for the state as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah, so we are impinging on the comp plan discussion, and I see 4 more questions. So it's Chris, Paul, Weston, and then Ken. So if you can...
Thank you. So the future land use maps that we've been given, are we going to be discussing those later, or was that just informational that we asked from last time?
They'll be part of the comp plan next session, next.
So, I think that it's really important, it's kind of food for thought, if you're going to want the road coming through your community, understanding the feeling of each of those county commissioners or each of those city municipalities as to whether they even want the road sited is important. We have representatives from those groups, but hopefully at the table, but still it's important to know where they're going to want to go. The other issue is, I'm concerned in Charlotte County where we're being tasked with building low-cost housing for workforce, because my opinion is they're just going to get on the highway and go someplace else where they're going to pay more. So you hope that this road is going to come through and be a pipeline for economic opportunity, and then people will come and live in your community and work. The double-edged sword is that maybe they'll actually get on the road and go someplace else to go make more money. So I want to understand how you predict those dynamics.
There's a lot to unpack in that last question there. How do you predict? I think a lot of this really is about understanding what you hit on the key point. What does your community want? What do the county commissioners want? What do the city commission want? What's the nature of the local community's desires? right? So if we look at this corridor, and if this is, I don't know the maps, I'm an economic developer, I'm not a GIS, I haven't seen these maps, this is the first time I've seen these maps today, okay? I don't care where the road goes, I'm ambivalent. What I know is that I look at everything through 3 lenses when I think about economic development. I look at what market opportunities do I have in front of me. And that may mean, let me just characterize that. The market opportunity may not be from your business school classes, from you learn about retail and wholesale and whatnot. It may be that my market opportunity in Winter Haven, because I have a CSX terminal, is to manufacture airplane parts for a manufacturing facility in Mobile, Alabama, and in Quebec, because I can get my parts there quickly and efficiently. Right, so my market opportunity for my region is very different when I think about outbound product. I also look through a lens of what does my community need? What are the market needs of my community? Which helps you determine kind of where you want to go, right? If your needs are in healthcare or your needs are in education, these are big institutional decisions that can help drive major portions of your economy. The third lens that I look through is what does my community actually want? What does it aspire to be? Because we're making decisions today and tomorrow for our kids or their grandkids, right? And so that's why environmental protection is so important. It's why it's so difficult on a timeline to predict what's going to happen when. I've never been good at that. I've learned the hard way not to kind of go there. But we can think about what we aspire to be, right? How do we want our community to move forward? So in Winter Haven, we have decided as a community that one of the things we want to do is we want to always be on the cutting edge of technology. Not necessarily implementing it, but being aware of what it is. Picking and choosing our opportunities so that we can control our destiny for our kids, right? Some communities may want to focus in healthcare. Others may want to focus in industrial. There won't necessarily be smooth and equitable transition of labor across this corridor. But over time, it will happen. And so I think there will be short-term losses. You may build affordable housing that's not needed in 10 years, but quite honestly, affordable housing in Florida is going to be needed in 10 years, even if it's for a different user. But if we look at all of our work through those lenses, I've always found that to be very successful, very helpful. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
Well, it does, but as a quick follow-up, being from a medium-sized county, we always aspire to bring in businesses and hope to grow our economy. What we're finding out, though, is that businesses want to have a ready workforce. They don't want to come into town and then try to train people. They've got to be moving. It's business. They have a bottom line. So they will probably go to Winter Haven because the workforce is up in Orlando and they can draw those people down. They're close enough. It's proximate. We have a really tough time where we are. Rural areas are even going to have a harder time. So how do you crack that nut?
This may be the kind of thing where you really do have to lead with housing. You have to lead with bringing the population here. Florida, if it really is the fastest growing state, the people will come, right? There's a lot of folks that need a place to live. We are short housing. We've developed 3,000 single family homes in 5 years, and I'm desperately short on rental housing right now. So I might not be any more competitive in the workforce game than you are, to be honest with you, because we're really maxed out. We're 2.5% unemployment. And Orlando's at full employment, and so is everybody else. So it's an awkward time to have the conversation about employment when we're all at full employment right now.
Okay,
So
Karen, we're 15 minutes over the agenda, so 2 more questions and then we'll close, okay?
Well, we had 3 total, can we just do all 3?
Okay.
Yeah, we were done. All.
Paul Griano, this is a quick one. I'm not very tech savvy. Is the future of our internet connection and communications tied to wires, or is it going to be bouncing radio waves off towers? And I'm just curious if we're looking at trying to put in wires when they may not be needed sometime in the future. I just don't know.
I would say the answer is both. The answer is both. So there is, when you need large capacity, wireless may not be the way to go, but the underground cables are a piece of, I think it's both, and maybe you're better prepared to answer that, but I think it's a combination.
I'm going to keep moving, if I may. Thank you for that. So Weston and then Ken.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. The economic development side of this thing is crucial to these counties right here, locally in this region here. You know, we're physically constrained county. I mean, we don't want the cheese, we just want out of trap. I mean, it's sad to say, but that's the truth. Guys, we like a grocery store. In this whole county, there's no grocery store. Luckily, we've got some convenience stores that help us out. That's what we're after. I mean, we want to keep the character. We love where we live. We want to keep the character of our county, our people, but I mean, just a grocery store would help us, a doctor's office. You know, I mean, that's things that people don't see in these rural counties that we don't have. And we think when this thing comes in it's the right time and the right place, and it happens the right way, it could really help us. I think that was Senator Galvano's vision is for these physically constrained counties to get some economic development out of this thing. I mean, I think that's the whole vision of the whole road, you know, and part of it. So we're really hoping that that's what happens, and you know, that's kind of our view and focus on it.
Yeah, that's really quick.
Sure. The Florida Economic Development Council is partnering with the Florida Chamber with the 2030 blueprint. And I know we all had an opportunity to participate in developing that blueprint. And as a result, there are 39 goals to help us as a state to address the statistics, I think, that Amy shared earlier about 1,000 people a day moving to the state of Florida and what that's going to look like. But specifically, we are focused on the GDP growth in Florida and doubling the rural share of GDP in Florida. So rural has about 2.4% of the state's GDP from a share standpoint. And there are task forces that have been formed through our membership to focus specifically on what are the drivers related to this, and CORES will be one of those. So I just encourage you to work with your local economic and workforce and community developers and have conversations with them about how they are addressing this long-term goal of doubling the rural share by 2030.
Last one, Kent, keep it short and sweet.
I'll be very brief, Karen, which wasn't originally my plan. But, question really is for DOT. First, I want to thank the panelists. Question to DOT, kind of a planning coordination question. Listening to how important the communications infrastructure, all kinds of utilities infrastructure would be brought in to help out. Where in the process does FDOT bring all these utility providers, communications, power, whoever, into the conversation? They've got years of planning. The capital investment is enormous, obviously. So when do they come into the process? Questions from DOT.
Yes, sir. So we are planning on having a panel next meeting with utility owners. So we do have a panel next meeting on utility owners and as well as developing counties to help formulate or at least address that question, because we are certainly moving past our normal boundary and as a DOT, as an agency, and we're willing to be at the table to help promote, plan, and execute some of these plans. So I don't have all the answers for you right now, but we are going to bring some experts in to help formulate those answers.
Better idea next meeting. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I think that that's going to be critical, I think, for all of us, recognizing that I think under the legislation, the counties and cities will have to have their comp plans amended to the state by the end of 2023, I believe.
Yeah, that's the next session.
There's a lot of work to do.
We'll be talking about that next. Great, thank you.
All right. Now, let's give a round of applause to our panel members. Thank you. Great comments and great questions. Thank you to the task force members. So the next item on the agenda is going over the local government comprehensive plans, regional and community visions. So in the last couple of meetings, there was a lot of conversation and interest about learning more about existing local government plans and visions in the study area. So we're going to have Barbara Hall, Regional Planning Administrator with DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, to present our comprehensive plans and regional community visions. Barbara?
I'm Barbara Powell, I'm the regional planning administrator for the Southwest as well as the area.
Just a second, Barbara, we don't have your mic on, and Dakota, did this go to sleep?
I'm Barbara Powell. I'm the Regional Planning Administrator for the Southwest area as well as the areas of critical state concern. So this is an area I'm familiar with. I'm going to go through the slide presentation and I'm going to strive to get you out for lunch. The community planning process in Florida begins with the broader community vision, followed by the comprehensive planning process, which then drives the land development regulations, and that's where your permitting comes in after that. Statutorily, there are required elements to the comprehensive plan. Those include future land use, transportation, water supply, wastewater, potable water, conservation elements, recreation, open space, housing. If you're a coastal community, you have to have a coastal management element. Then there's capital improvement and intergovernmental elements. Optional elements include public school facilities, airport master plans, economic development elements. In the statute for the CORES, there's been the first statute has been in place for many years, and this is where we coordinate the road locations and corridors with the comprehensive plans. We have a process amongst agencies where we review the road improvements, road corridors, and look at the comprehensive plans to see if it's consistent. Then there's a new section that was put in recently that requires local governments with interchanges along these corridors to address land uses and resource protections around those interchanges. So the local governments that are within the Southwest corridor, we start up with Polk County, who has the most municipalities, and then move down through all the way to Collier. There are a total of 9 counties and 37 municipalities through this. Most of the development occurs along the major roads of 17 and 27. What we did with the team from FDOT was to go through the comprehensive plans of the counties just to take a look and see where they stand on what's the time frame of their plans, where do they stand with regard to addressing corridors in their transportation elements. So we've gone through and reviewed that, and as you can see, looking at this, most of the plans have a very far out planning horizon for both transportation and future land use. And those planning horizons don't always line up because the transportation often is further out than the land use. A couple of counties that will need to be updating, Glades and Collier. Collier's is underway currently, and Glades is not due to update their plan for another 4 years, but I happen to know that they are underway in reviewing their comp plan for some of these road improvements and to update their plan for the planning horizon. Now, when you get into what these policies in the plan move, you've got references in most of the plans to a new or enhanced corridor. All of the plans just have policies to discourage sprawl. Back before the 2011 changes to the legislature, it was a requirement that you address sprawl in your plan, so fortunately that's already covered. New activity centers, There are some that have those. Henry is very active in developing those new activity centers. Polk has extensive planning policies that address activity centers on a variety of levels, neighborhood activity centers to regional activity centers. So they're looking at it at different scales. All of the counties have, in these corridor areas, have conservation areas, and there are a few who have economic development elements. Starting at the top with Polk County, down at the southwest corner, you see there's a large phosphate mining area. Up in the northern part, you've got the Green Swamp area of critical state concern. Most of the development is occurring along I-4, US 27, and there's some areas along 33 that are starting to develop, and then of course the Lakeland, Bartow areas. You've got the Avon Park bombing range down at the southeast corner of Polk County, and that goes on into the next county down. And in Hardy County, there are large areas of agriculture, as well as a few areas of development along the major roads. You've got some conservation areas and some sites that will have already been identified. They're identified areas to support future development. And Hardy County is in the process of looking at that as well. Then we go on to Highlands County. Highlands, again, you've got large areas of agriculture, you've got a large conservation area in the northern part. They're supporting new communities. And their comp plan does allow to limited access corridors and regional high-speed rail. As we move into DeSoto County, again, another large area of conservation, lots of agriculture. You've got the solar farm up in the northern part of the county. And again, development moving along the road system. And of course, the Peace River is another thing that dissects your county. We move into Charlotte County, which is more developed, but you've still got a large area of agriculture, as well as Babcock Ranch development down the southern part, which is a new community. You've got big areas of conservation, and a lot of the development is to the west along the coastal lines. There is a 300-foot right-of-way previously referenced along the State Road 31 in that conservation area. Now we come into Glades County, and again, large areas of agriculture, very few areas developed, a lot of it along the lake, southern part of the county. And the comp plan does support new communities, establishing new towns, and they're working with Henry and FDOT to expand the corridors that cross the Caloosahatchee River, another big divider of the county. Lee County has most of its development, again, is along the coast. On the eastern side, you have large areas of conservation and the density reduction areas to help support the mining. And their comp plan does support new communities. And then we've got Henry County, which has been very active in land use changes. They've got large areas of agricultural. There's some areas of, small areas of development, but there's a lot more designated. Otherwise, there's ag conservation, and these are the conservation easements to continue ag uses on those areas. And then the Big Cypress Seminole Reservation. And then Collier County is constrained by the Big Cypress area of critical state concern, which is also the Big Cypress Preservation. And you have a large block of state-owned and federal-owned land hemming in their coastal development. And to the north, in that white area, there's large property owners that are working with the rural land stewardship areas in Collier County, as well as putting together a habitat conservation plan for the future development of that property. So as we begin to look at the corridor policies within some of the plans, Highlands, regional high-speed rail, a new limited access corridor, new limited access facilities, and they're coordinating with the Turnpike Enterprise, FDOT, in locating those interstate highway systems. Charlotte is looking to expand State Road 31 to work with Babcock Branch, and they support the conveyance of that right-of-way or State Road 31 for the expansion. Glades County, they are working north-south roadway, work with Henry County and FDOT to explore potential for expanded north-south roadways. And that takes into account some of the Everglades traffic that's to be expected. And then with Polk County, they have a multimodal urban cluster concept, and that's where I was talking about the neighborhood activity centers, business park centers, as well as regional activity centers. They've also identified transit development areas along their major corridors so they can start boosting densities in those areas so that transit will be more profitable alternative to getting on the road. They've actually established minimum densities in those areas. And then they've got urban growth areas. Polk County has a very complex hierarchical system of their comp plan, and their growth areas, especially the urban growth areas, outline some of the things that can be done and can't be done, such as, encouragement of wastewater, encouragement of potable water systems, locations near major corridors. So they have been working to implement their multimodal system with their transit system development areas. DeSoto County, they have policies that provide multimodal capabilities, and the county promotes efficient multimodal systems. Henry County promotes alternative modes of transportation to provide efficient multimodal transportation network. Now, we've talked about the comp plan. The visioning process, one good example is the Heartland 2060. And this was started several years ago. We've been working with the Central Florida RPC to develop this plan and vision. Our department, FDOT, has provided resources and towards this. And they're looking not only at the economic development, but education, water supply, all the things you need to begin to develop an area like this, and choosing those areas to develop. This is how comp planning relates to other plans. It's a bit complicated, but in essence, if you have a new road that's going to be sited, you're going to look at the comprehensive plan to see if it's allowed, encouraged, whether it's something the community desires. Port systems, we review. We're looking at the regional water supply. The regional water supply people with each of the water management districts is also looking at that, because one begets the other, and they are all related. There's conservation lands that need to be set aside and marked for acquisition. So in amending the comprehensive plan, there are three ways you can do it. A small scale amendment, and those are less than 10 acres. There's a yearly cap on those. Those one meeting and you're done. The expedited state review, and this is where most of those corridor plan will probably occur. The expedited state review is a shorter process, still 2 meetings, but our review time is shortened, as well as the commenting agencies. And then you've got the state coordinated review, which is a longer process, and those who have to do an evaluation update as part of their evaluation and appraisal report updates, they have to go through the state coordinated review. So timing. So while the task force is going on, there's no need to do any amendment, but it's a good time to start looking at your plans, looking at the resources you may need to update your plan. The Department of Economic Opportunity has a grant program for comprehensive planning technical assistance that comes up each year. Right now it's in the budget. We always wait till the budget is signed to advertise. But usually in the May timeframe, we will advertise that. It runs for fiscal years, and we can assist the local governments in getting the plans updated and addressing that. There's legislation moving through now to give priority to those areas in the CORES for that grant. So after the task force report is finalized, that's a good time to start amending the plan, looking at your guiding principles and potential pathways for those corridors, and start looking to see how it lines up with your plan and your visions. And then by 2023, we've got to address the land use along the proposed interchanges. That is it. I will be around all day, so if you have any specific questions.
Paul, did you have your question, or was that still up? Okay. Did anybody have clarifying questions? Jason beat you. Okay, Jason. Oh, and then Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for that. I was just wondering, looking at all those comp plans, is there information that you've come across in those comp plans that would push or pull an alignment of any corridor segment? And if there are elements within existing comp plans, would it be practical or possible for that to be mapped for the task force so that we can understand a little bit more of what sort of the governing plans are in the areas? And then I understand I may have this backwards, looking at the last slide you shared. If the idea here is for the task force to make recommendations that would then guide future comp plan amendment revisions, then perhaps that's the way it works, but it'd be helpful for me anyway to understand where among these existing comp plans there might be information saying stay away from this area, or we would love to have connections to this community.
At this level, we've not really looked at that. We are starting to put together some of the assets like the Everglades Airport, some of those conservation areas, to better map. And this was just at the county level. There's cities in there that have their own comprehensive plans that tie into those regional water supply plans and the 2060 vision. So that would be something we look at further.
Yeah, just a quick question, I think. Is there a common, in your chart about the sort of the elements that are in each of the plans, is there a common definition of urban sprawl in the Growth Management Act?
Yes.
And so where we see, so maybe in the panel we could add, maybe that's more appropriate, your panelists, or is there going to be a panel on urban? Okay, so, okay.
Not today.
Okay, so I guess a question would be, I'll hang it out there, what is the definition of sprawl? So when we see new communities, but no sprawl, I'd like to understand what that means. And then to Jason's point, I think he actually asked it better than I did. Could you go back to your slide, your last one there, the timeline? So when we submit a final report, it says, can amend plan to incorporate guiding principles and potential corridor paths or courses. That implies that we'll be mapping a corridor path or course. Is that's the plan for the task force that will actually, because I agree with Jason, I think if there's already a kind of a path, the sooner we can sort of see it, I think the better. Yeah, Will?
Yeah, so Shannon, I think we had one good comment trying to collectively put all these comp plans maybe on a map and overlay it with all the other layers, so we'll do that. And then, but all we're trying to do is, right now we got county-wide opportunities and keep narrowing it down. So what we're going to talk about this afternoon is avoidance maps, kind of a step one. And then we can maybe take Jason's advice and use the comp plans to further narrow that down. But that's we're starting wide and trying to use all the information we can to make those good decisions.
Yeah, obviously, and I truly believe this, that Florida's 400 plus local governments should have home rule powers. I do believe that. But it's widely known that the Growth Management Act, which is now the Community Planning Act, has been watered down, and it is very easy for local governments to amend their comprehensive plans. Now, when we're talking about this toll road project, we're talking about a multi-regional and statewide capital improvement project that has major land use implications. And I refer you back to the map that shows current trends that you saw that was under the 2070 project that UF and Friends of Florida has prepared. That is based on the comprehensive plans as they are today and how local governments are planning. So my question is, wouldn't it be a good suggestion or discussion that the state legislation controlling land use have more teeth to it to prevent, if a toll road is built in this region, to prevent the type of sprawl and bad land use planning to occur? So under the current 163 Chapter 2, it doesn't have that. But I think if there were more teeth to allowing, to prevent that type of land use, I think would be a good discussion.
I cannot speculate on legislative changes, but we, as a department, what we can commit to the task force and to everyone is that we understand that some of the revisions to implement the CORES program to the comp plans will not be just limited to the transportation element because of the far-reaching impact, the conservation element, the land use, all these things have to be considered holistically. So we are going to enhance our partnership with the Department of Economic Opportunity, and also we're going to be working with our regional planning council partners to assist the locals with potential changes that's needed to implement CORES with regard to their comprehensive plans. So we're putting some of the action items into action already right now.
Yeah, respectfully, Mr. Dickman, I don't think the solution is going to be having Tallahassee dictate the outcome, but I do understand the genesis of what you're talking about and why I appreciate where we're going with this conversation. What I think would be valuable for this task force, as you try to synthesize further these comprehensive plans, is understanding what does the vision look like in the rural designations. So you take all these counties, they have, I've got some familiarity from my appraisal experience in at least 7 of them on a regular basis. What does that density look like right now? These are visions that these counties have already adopted. They're plans that they have for what these lands can be developed with right now. I mean, if you've got 10 square miles, it's at 1 unit per acre, that's got a density calculation that we could pretty readily, I think, put a number to. And I think that would be helpful to this task force to see what does that look like? What is the actual residential build out? Because that's what it boils down to for a lot of this conversation, sprawl, residents. What is the residential build out that's anticipated with the current count that you have under these land uses? Set aside zoning, and this could be a more complicated question. You can make it as complicated as you want to, but at a core level, particularly with the rural designations, you can get a number count. And then we can then, I think as a task force, look at recommending ways not for Tallahassee to dictate how this is going to work, but to ask these communities, what is the shared vision? What is a singular regional vision you have for how this is going to build out? You've already committed to say, let's say 150,000 people potentially are going to live here, but no changes to zoning, no changes to land use, no changes to the road network. That's already on the books. What does that look like if we want to change or adapt the form that takes on the ground as a result of putting this road and this pathway in? And that's something I think would be a useful statistic for this task force to use.
Yeah, I didn't know, Pat, I know you with the Regional Planning Council on the regional level, but have done some of that unified land use mapping or generic land use mapping.
One of the real challenges in comprehensive plans is that every jurisdiction, pretty much in the state of Florida, has a different definition for their land use categories, what can be allowed, when it can be allowed, exactly as you were pointing out too. For instance, a hypothetical, you can have 1 unit per acre unless you have potable water, and then you can have 2, and if you have wastewater service, you can have 4. So when you look at the variation, it depends on where you're going to put your utilities, and that's a simplified version, but there's all kinds of variations in that, and every comprehensive plan and every city comprehensive plan also has their variations. So the approach that we've taken from Heartland 2060, and also to support a lot of other work that we have done, both on the environmental side, on the land use side, on the transportation side, has been to create a generalized land use map that takes into account every city and every county and generalizes what that land use is. Not all of it determines the densities beyond those general categories, because then that gets into all the other things you talked about. It can get so complicated, it's a lifetime analysis almost. But the truth of the matter is, looking at it from a generalized standpoint is almost the only way that you can look on a broad landscape at that issue from our experience.
Thank you. So we have Penny and then Jason again, and then I think we need to break for lunch before you all lunch me, or let you run over.
Yeah, just a quick comment, and I quote my county attorney, how we grow depends on a vote of 3 in my commission, sometimes 4. It's the majority. It changes from commission to commission. So the idea that you can create something that will somehow predict the future, it's probably not going to happen. We could try, but it's not what I would call an exact science.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Last one.
Yeah, and just a request following on Andrew's comments about the 2070 map and some uncertainty surrounding that. I would love to have somebody from Thousand Friends or FDAX or the University of Florida that helped compile that 2070 report. The technical report is online, but I'd love to have an opportunity for the task force to listen to a little bit about how that projection was made, what changes might have come about since then, because I know the Bureau of Economic Beaver, they've come up with some additional projections up to 2050. So I'd like more information about that. I think it's important to get to need as well, so it's a recommendation for a future panel.
Karen, quick point of information. Are you going to be, I think there was a request to compile all of the future land use maps into one document. Is that the plan?
We'll have to synthesize it a little bit just because there's going to be some differences in definitions, but we'll do our best to put it on one later, yes.
Right, so my comment would be to request, please, if it's ag land, to make it all the same color. If it's not, don't just put all 7 or whatever on one page, but actually make it make sense. Thank you.
Karen?
Yes.
If I could just throw out to try to simplify it and make a cut line, choose a density level, because it is very, very complicated. Have one color for urban uses, whether that's industrial. I mean, I think most of us would agree if it's higher density than 1 unit per acre, it's a different category, and you could probably easily just put that all in one pot, and then give us the rest, which from as the demonstration showed, you have huge swaths of most of these counties that are in one layer of agriculture. And I can just tell you off the top of my head, it's 1 to 1, 1 to 10, 1 to 20, almost overwhelmingly. And you could probably cover 65% of the land area in this corridor in just those 3 categories and get us a pretty decent number in the rural designations.
Okay, thank you. We'll work with folks that know that. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone, for the engaging conversation that we had, and thank you, Barbara, for your presentation. So we'll break for lunch, but as we break for lunch, I would want to ask you guys to think over lunch about the conversations that we had and some of the points that you brought up through these conversations and how they could help with further defining the guiding principles, because some of the points that were brought today will be good points to add to the guiding principles. And as a Sunshine Law reminder, please enjoy being together, but refrain from having conversations related to this business. And we are going to get back at 1:40, right, Karen? 1 hour.
Yep. So when you go outside, there's places to eat outside. If you want to bring it back in here, the task force, you're welcome.